Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's the 20th of June, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by our recruiting whiz kid, Stephen Wagner, as we discuss the news of the day. And the news of the day continues to be recruiting. It's that time of year, Canes fans. And third week of June is about that time when Mario Cristobal starts, flooding in those commitments and building a recruiting class. And we're starting to see that, Stephen, back-to-back commitments. The last 2 nights, we didn't have a show. Yesterday morning, I'm going to come clean. I went to the Panther game the night before, and I ran into a whole bunch of our CaneSport.com subscribers out there. And one of them grabbed me, pulled me into his suite where the party was going down. And even with the Panther loss, we were there well after the game ended, and I'm not going to mention any screen names or anything, but he knows that I really appreciate the great time that he showed me. The only problem was that I slept through the show, which made Matt Shodell very happy, of course, because he never wants to do the show. But we didn't get a chance to talk about Miami's commitment of Demetrius Campbell. So I'm going to circle back to that in a moment. But we have another commitment to talk about, and third offensive line commit of the 2025 class, a young man by the name of Jaden Wilkerson. And he's a 3-star prospect from Orlando and Water. He chose the Canes over UCF, Syracuse, and Rutgers. So this wasn't a guy that they had to beat all the kingpins of college football out for, Stephen. This is an evaluation take, okay? That Miami is trusting its own eyes and seizing on Wilkerson, who he's a relatively athletic kid. He brings decent size to the table. So that's what Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal like. They like their offensive linemen athletic, and they're taking a shot here with Wilkerson. I'm going to give you the floor. Your thoughts on the latest Canes pickup in the 2025 class?
Yeah, so really, I think a lot of what we're seeing in this class is Cristobal and Mirabal are really making a bet on themselves with their offensive line evaluation. I think this year is a pretty good year to kind of bet on yourself as far as the offensive line goes too, because the offensive line took a step forward from last year to this year. I think it's going to be even better next year if everything progresses the way that we think everything is going to progress. And given Cristobal and Mirabal's track record with offensive linemen dating back to their time at Oregon and heck, even at FIU, it's kind of hard not to say, okay, I'm going to have to trust these guys over the rankings evaluators and the people who put the stars next to names. I think that kind of after looking at Wilkerson and Campbell's tapes, they're both really versatile guys. I think Campbell maybe would be a little bit more comfortable on the inside. I think Wilkerson could develop to the point where he could play tackle or guard. Both are pretty raw, but both have really, really good ceilings. I think either of them or both. I think both of them are certainly capable of being starters at the next level. I think Wilkerson could be a future All ACC player. Now, obviously, both of these guys, like I said, they are really, really raw. But recruiting offensive linemen, especially, is such a crapshoot. There is, we say all the time, there's no guarantees that skill position players or quarterbacks are going to pan out. Offensive line is a really, really, really tough position to evaluate. Just because, the most polished kid in high school or the kid with the highest floor, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to succeed at the college level if he does not, match the physicality of players that he's eventually going to start going up against. Because playing offensive line demands that you be so incredibly, incredibly physical. it takes much, much longer to develop, and it is much, much easier to whiff on a lot of these guys. I mean, who's to say that, Ty Haywood, who I think right now is like the number 1 or number 2 offensive tackle in the country, or DJ Sanders isn't going to get to college and absolutely whiff, and they're just going to absolutely, completely bust. Now, of course, I think that those two respective guys are very, very good players. But because it's so common for offensive line bust to happen with a lot of these really big time blue chip guys, unless you find yourself, a Francis Maui Noah or a Panay Sewell type guy, I really think that at some point you kind of have to look at you kind of have to look at what you value as an offensive line coach and as an evaluator, and you have to say, okay, well, this guy checks enough of the boxes that I am willing to bet that we're going to be right on this guy. And because, like I said, Cristobal and Mirabal have such a good track record with offensive linemen, you kind of have to trust them and think, yeah, I really do think they're onto something here. I think they figured out something that no one else has figured out. We saw it earlier this cycle with TK Mew whenever they took that commitment earlier. We saw that again with Demetrius Campbell and with Jaden Wilkerson, because none of those guys are inside the top 800. But Miami feels very, very strongly about all three of them. They think they're completely right. They think they are spot on. They figured it out. Other schools just didn't. And there's still a couple other guys that Miami's definitely still in the mix for. I mean, Solomon Thomas, he's on pace to be a 5-star offensive lineman. He's probably going to play guard at the next level. Right now, he's committed to FSU. I think Miami's going to have an awesome chance with him this fall, especially if they win the way that I think a lot of us think they're going to win. S.J. Elifetuli, who's going to be another guy who's going to visit this weekend. I think he's the number 3 or number 4 interior offensive lineman in the country. That's another guy who can play guard or center. And, he is one of those true pure blue chip guys. Miami's going to have an awesome shot with those two. So I think right now we're just seeing that Miami really just has guys ranked all over their board. And sometimes the rankings or sometimes the guys that they have listed on their board, that's going to match up with what the On3 industry rankings say. And other times it won't.
All right. Well, Mirabal and Cristobal, they're not afraid to take some chances with their offensive linemen. They know they're not going to hit on every guy, but when they see a guy like this, okay, he's 6'6" and a half, 330 pounds. Right now, he's a little bit better run blocker than a pass blocker, but I'm sure they feel like they can coach that side of it. His footwork is just not there yet. And that's why I'm assuming why you call him and other people call him a little bit of a project, because he's not a finished product. That's why he's a 3-star and he's not, a 4 or 5-star. And it's the growth. But Mirabal and Cristobal, they feel strongly that they can develop this kind of guy. And that's why you saw the take and he became, I think, the 9th commitment of this class. Now, the guy that became the 8th commitment was Demetrius Campbell, also a 3-star. Okay, if he's playing right now at a Christian Prep, and another one that is 6'6", 300 pounds, big body, that Cristobal and Mirabal feel like they can work with and develop. He's big, he's physical, he's relatively athletic and fast for an offensive lineman. So it's going to be really, 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 really interesting to watch them kind of mold these guys. I would say Campbell is probably a little bit better in pass pro right now than Wilkerson. He seems to have a little bit better footwork. He was a basketball player, which I think has a lot to do with that. And he credits that, with his athleticism up front. But Stephen, you had a chance to take a deep dive into him as well and look at his tape. Give us a little bit more insight into Mr. Campbell and what your thoughts were when you took a look.
Yeah, kind of looking at him, like you said, his footwork is very, very good, and that kind of comes from his basketball background. His parents were both college basketball players. His brother actually had an offer to go play basketball at Notre Dame. I believe now he's actually playing basketball at Howard. Um, I certainly think that right now he's a little bit more polished than Jaden Wilkerson. His superpower is definitely how well he moves. He moves very, very well for a guy of his size, and him and Wilkerson have pretty similar frames here. I've had a chance to stand next to both of them. Um, I think both have really, really, really good ceilings. But like we said, this is another guy that, Cristobal and Mirabal are kind of betting on themselves. They're betting that they got this guy right. Maybe other guy or maybe other schools didn't necessarily have him as high on their boards, but Cristobal and Mirabal have both recruited him pretty aggressively since the spring. They got him down to campus in March. I know they've been out to his school to check up on him. They've done a very, very good job maintaining that relationship, and then they were finally able to get him to go ahead and pull the trigger. So I think that's what, three commitments now in June, and we are starting to get to the point where we could see a couple more here over the next week and a half or so before the start of July, which is about what we expected. We expected it's possible Miami gets maybe 5 or 6 commits in June, and then in July everyone is going to come off the board. In July and August, especially, everyone's going to come off the board. I do not expect there to be very many uncommitted prospects left on Miami's board, other than maybe a few flip targets. By the time that the season actually starts, I think Miami's recruiting class is probably going to be about 80% finished, or I should say at least 80% finished by the time the fall season actually starts.
Yeah, I mean, this is how Mario does it. People, love to see the team recruiting rankings, and we're looking for Miami, and Miami, has not been in the top 10 to this point. But this is how Mario does it. It's always, he wants kids to take their visits. He doesn't want phony commitments. Okay, so with June being such a heavy visit month, it just makes sense. Let the kids take their visits and then commit. Don't have them commit before they take other visits, because then you're going to have kids flipping all over the place. There is nothing that Mario hates more than flips and all the craziness that comes with it. So 2 commits already this week. I think there'll be more here in the coming days, and another big recruiting weekend this weekend, Stephen. And so we're starting to take a look at some of those kids that are going to be coming in this weekend, and one of them is an outside linebacker edge from Benedictine Military School in Savannah, Georgia, by the name of Herbert Scroggins. And like I said, he'll be on campus this weekend. He was last here for the spring game in April. He tells us that his communication with Miami has been impeccable. He's fired up. Your thoughts on Mr. Scroggins, who's going to be visiting this weekend?
Yeah, Herbert's kind of a guy where it's just kind of he's listed as an athlete for us. He could play linebacker or defensive end, or if you really, really want to try to beef him up, I actually think he wouldn't make a horrible 3 technique or even a 5 technique in some packages that might use a tight end or 2 tight ends. It really just kind of depends. Is he your cup of tea at this certain position? Very, very athletic, really, really strong legs. You can use him in a variety of ways. Kind of if he was in a 3-4 scheme, I think he would be the perfect, stand-up linebacker or stand-up linebacker / defensive end. Maybe coming off the edge a little bit. I think in Miami's system, he could maybe be a defensive end that would have opportunities to kind of drop into coverage, play a little bit of zone, because we know that Guidry, he does not hesitate to drop defensive linemen into coverage. And I do think that he absolutely could be that type of guy. His superpower is just how athletic he is and how versatile he is. He's made a lot of plays at the high school level, just being really, really athletic, and quite frankly, being more athletic than a lot of the competition that he's gone up against. He's a little bit raw, although I don't think he's nearly as raw as a lot of people think he is. I personally feel that he's kind of underrated by the rankings industry. I personally think he is going to be a really, really, really good football player one day. And I think whoever gets him is going to get a really talented athlete.
And he's not the only defensive lineman Miami is recruiting from Georgia. They're after 5-star Elijah Griffin, a 3-star by the name of Walter Mathis. So a lot of emphasis we're seeing on the state of Georgia. Another guy that's going to be visiting this weekend, and I know that Miami wants him probably as much as anybody in the class, and that's Booker T. Washington, 4-star cornerback Ben Hanks Jr. He's made a ton of unofficial visits to Coral Gables. Seems like every time we go down there, we see Ben Hanks walking around the indoor practice facility. He will be in this weekend, Stephen, on his official visit. This is a really big one for Miami. This is a 6'1", 165-pound corner with a nice wingspan and a kid that just covers exceptionally well. This, to me, is one of the keys of this recruiting class, Ben Hanks. You agree?
Yeah, but a lot of people also don't realize that this kid's a Florida legacy. His dad, Ben Hanks Sr., was an all-SEC linebacker for Steve Spurrier for the Gators back in the early 90s. And he does have pretty strong ties to Florida. He's visited Florida a ton of times, too. I personally think it's going to be Miami, Georgia, or Florida. Georgia's made a pretty strong push, too. I think Louisville and FSU are in the mix a little bit, although I don't feel as strongly about them as I do Miami, Florida, and Georgia. Florida and Georgia both really impressed him on his visits there. Florida definitely rolled out the red carpet, showed him everything the Gators can do for him. Although I think kind of an important thing to note here is he has said multiple times, if he goes to Florida, it's not going to be just because his father's a legacy there. It's going to be because he actually truly does believe in the Gators and he believes in Billy Napier. So, I think in a situation like this, we can kind of throw, the legacy idea out the window because this really does come down to how good of a job Florida itself is going to do recruiting him. And if they're able to sell him on the whole vision of success that Billy Napier is hoping for, especially as they're going into a year where their over-under is I think 5.5 wins or something like that. So I do think that Florida is in a position where they really will need to win to ultimately have a shot on signing day. Although I think he's probably going to end up committing this summer. So we'll just kind of see. We'll just kind of see how it shakes out. But either way, once he commits, I don't expect his recruitment to be over.
All right, and the recruiting stories on the website. We got a story on him on the website today, and the stories continue onward. We're constantly posting new updates on kids. And another one that we've got this morning for you guys is Miami Central 3-star linebacker Ezekiel Marcelin. Stephen, you put a RPM prediction on him to go to Miami weeks ago. That commitment has not come. You keep having to double down and keep reinforcing it. I'm with you. I think Ezekiel Marcelin ends up in this class. What's taking so long?
I think right now a little bit is he does want to go on his official visits before he actually makes a decision. So he's already taken official visits to Miami and Pitt. He's going to go visit Stanford this weekend. Pittsburgh, I think, has become much more of a contender than a lot of people realize. Pittsburgh is recruiting him just as hard as Miami is. And we all know how hard Miami recruits a lot of these local targets. Derek Nicholson and Mario Cristobal, they've been all over him for more than a year now. But the effort that Pittsburgh has been making for him should not be overlooked at all. They have matched Miami's intensity. They rolled out the red carpet the same way Miami did, although the Canes did. He said the Canes did set the bar pretty high whenever he went there on that first visit. And Stanford's another school that, they've been pretty consistent in his recruitment. They've been saying, give us a chance, come down here for an OV, and we'll show you everything that we've got to offer. So I wouldn't totally count out Stanford, but right now I'm probably about 80% confident he'll be a Hurricane, 80, 85%, somewhere in that range. And then I'd probably put that 15 to 20% remaining confidence in Pittsburgh with, I don't know, maybe a 1% chance he ends up at Stanford. He does plan to take a couple OVs during the season. I know he wants to visit Penn State. I know he wants to visit Louisville during the season. He's already said he will keep his recruitment open. But right now, I feel really good about the position that Miami is in. But like I said, Pittsburgh has been pushing very, very hard.
All right, and a few other things of note on the website today. Our State of the U series continues. Yesterday, we took a look at the quarterback position. Today, we analyzed the running back position. Hope you guys have been enjoying the State of the U series. Make sure you check that out. And our 50-1 countdown, man, we started at 50. We're now up to number 10. So we're building momentum here to the first, second, and third guys that we've identified as the top players on the roster. Number 10 is Inez Cooper. He's an offensive lineman that I personally believe is going to end up having a long career in the National Football League. A guy that I know is on the radar of the pro scouts, and he can go as soon as after this season. So this will be a big season for Inez Cooper, and we'll see how that goes. But we take a look at him in our 50-1 countdown today. But that's going to do it for this morning for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us. With no match showdown, we just got straight down and to the point, man. 20 minutes, 45 seconds, Stephen. We're bringing this thing home. If you're watching on YouTube right now and you like this show, like our channel, please hit your subscribe and like buttons. It does help us with the algorithms at YouTube in growing our audience. And if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, we're getting about a month out to training camp, guys. It's time to come on board, join our community of fans. You will not be sorry. We've got our message boards where everybody interacts with everybody every single day. And then, of course, you've got our team that is working around the clock every single day to enhance your fan experience the best that we can with our coverage of the program. So for Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thanks again for being part of the show this morning. You guys that I saw at the Panther game the other night, it was great seeing you. Thanks for the party. And I guess we still got to wait another day before the Panthers get yet another shot to close out the Stanley Cup. So in case we don't see you again, tune in. And then we'll say, let's go Panthers. Exciting time in South Florida. But the Canes have certainly kept their foothold with two big commitments this week. And we feel pretty certain there's at least a couple more left to come here before we get through the weekend. So we'll see you guys next time, everybody.